Commencing mission.
Combat.
Hello, Snake. It's been a while, hasn't it? I hear you've been causing quite the ruckus in Nicaragua. Nothing much to report from my end. The legacy's being put to good use. Or so they tell me. But enough with the small talk. There's something I need to tell you. You saw the photo that came with this tape, right? The boss gave that to me 10 years ago. I'm sorry, I should have told you sooner. I probably should have told you right away. But sending it to you hasn't been an easy decision to make. It's taken me 10 years. Once you've heard what I have to say, you'll understand why. That photo belonged to her. I know what you're thinking. What does she have to do with this? You've probably seen it 100 times in the press already. Obviously, it's of the Mercury 7, the first group of American astronauts, the heroes of Project Mercury. But there were actually 8 people in that photo. One of them was edited out, erased, without a trace. That 8th astronaut, the one airbrushed out of existence, that was her, Snake. Now, why did they need to keep her existence a secret? What were they trying to hide? The answer goes back even further. 17 years ago. It was the height of the Cold War. The Eastern and Western blocs were racing to develop space technology to match their nuclear arsenals. In 1957, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik 1, the first artificial satellite. The Americans were stunned. They'd been led to believe their country led the world in science and technology. That shock quickly turned into fear. If the Russians had the know-how to launch a satellite into space, they could use it to launch a nuclear missile, too. Frantic, the U.S. threw everything it had into the space race. The following year, the Army succeeded in launching the first American satellite, Explorer 1. The National Aeronautics and Space Administration was established that fall, and Project Mercury with it. The goal was to send a man into space, and 7 men were chosen as pilot candidates. The media dubbed them the Mercury 7. They were immediately hailed as national heroes, icons of Western space exploration. But after Explorer, America suffered a series of failed rocket launches. Desperate, the government made a fateful decision. Unable to wait for its space program to mature, they'd steal the Soviets' technology, at the same time sabotaging their space program. You know better than anyone how hard a mission that was. The Soviet space program was shrouded in secrecy. Recovering that information would be no easy task. Using the help of an insider, they'd insert a sleeper agent into the research institute, or else recruit one of those insiders to do the job for them. And, if necessary, the mission leader would have to go in and sort things out themselves. Someone was needed with experience, knowledge, and superior intuition. And the only one for the job was the boss. The president himself asked for her by name. He needed someone who could be trusted with the fate of a nation. Who else to turn to but the hero of the Second World War? It was June 1959. So you see, Snake, that's why she left. That was the top secret mission that took her from you. But her selection ruffled a few CIA feathers. They didn't appreciate the president going over their head like that. The mission was tough enough already, and now the CIA was dragging its feet. She couldn't get anything out of them. No manpower, no information. Left to her own devices, the boss made a decision she knew would come back to haunt her. She decided to tap into the Philosopher's Network. And that's when the wheels of fate began to turn.
Neutralize the enemy troops. Try and dodge this one! Take that! Try and dodge this one! Armed and ready! recoveries until there's more room. Take that! Standing room all.
You're fired. You're fired. You're fired. You're fired.
Commencing mission. You're in for some heavy combat with this one. Try and make it back in one piece.
The Philosophers were a secret society of power brokers formed in a pact between the US, Russia, and China in the early 20th century. Of course, by that time, the American and Soviet branches had already parted ways. But there were those among the remaining Russian philosophers not entirely happy with the one-party communist state. The boss reached out to them. She arranged clandestine meetings in Berlin, hoping to find a way into OKB-1, the Soviets' premier design bureau. She worked tirelessly to win their sympathy, in some instances using huge sums of cash, in others, by helping them over the Berlin Wall. It was a dangerous game to be playing. The Philosophers had everything on her, and not just information either. She'd given birth to a child on the battlefield, only to have them immediately snatch it away. I know she told you that story. If that child was in the hands of the Soviet Philosophers, she'd be putting more than just herself in danger. But she did what she had to do. At the time, the Soviet Union was believed to have an arsenal of missiles far greater than that of the United States. If that proved to be the case, Moscow would be free from the yoke of nuclear deterrence. raising the possibility that the Soviets might actually launch nukes if they felt it necessary. As you know, the so-called missile gap turned out to be a Soviet bluff. Moscow had gone to incredible lengths to perpetuate the lie. In fact, the whole space race was really just a part of an elaborate ruse. Only we didn't know that at the time. She used to joke that even she swallowed the whole missile gap story, hook, line, and sinker. She put her life on the line for the sake of her country, to prevent nuclear war. And it was because of her sacrificial efforts that America succeeded in placing a sleeper agent inside OKB-1. NASA began to receive huge volumes of technical data from the Soviet program. By the end of 1959, they'd succeeded in sending a chimpanzee named Sam on a ballistic rocket flight. The rocket never left the atmosphere. But all the same, it was a huge success for NASA, restoring confidence in its technology. Then, just when the operation was starting to produce results, the CIA came calling. "You're a war hero," they said. "No need for you to dirty your hands with this sort of black ops. We'll take it from here." In effect, they wanted to reap the rewards for themselves. But the boss didn't object. "My part is over," she said. "I don't care what you do with the data now." It seemed as if NASA was making great strides toward manned spaceflight while the Russians lagged behind. They even got a report from their mole at OKB-1. "The safe return of Sam has sent our scientists into a panic," he said. Soon afterward, the Soviet Union sent an animal of its own into space on Sputnik 2, the dog Kudryavka, better known to the world as Laika. But Laika was fated never to return to Earth. The U.S. can recover its spacecraft from the ocean upon re-entry. But the Soviet Union only borders the frozen Arctic. They had to bring their spacecraft down on land. How could they soften the impact enough to bring a living creature back safely? The agent reported that the Soviets hadn't yet found a solution to that problem. The plot to sabotage the Soviet space program seemed to be working, too. First, they tampered with Sputnik 4's re-entry. Then, 2 months later, one of their rockets exploded on the launch pad. They did manage to send 2 dogs into orbit aboard Sputnik 5 and return them safely to Earth. But the agent dismissed it as a fluke. Dogs, sure, but humans? They didn't have the technology. Everybody believed it. Everybody was complacent. Everybody. Except the boss. There was something about the Sputnik 5 schematics they were getting that didn't seem right. Some kind of ejection device on the capsule that didn't quite belong. She couldn't figure out the reason why it was there. What was it supposed to eject? NASA shrugged off her concerns. They figured it was probably meant to eject the flight recorder in case of an accident. The boss pleaded with them to investigate, but the CIA wasn't having it. They probably thought she was trying to reclaim some of the glory for herself. The boss wouldn't give up. She decided to head to the Soviet Union herself, alone, without any backing from the CIA. By the beginning of the next year, 1961, she'd succeeded in infiltrating OKB-1. That's when she saw the truth for the first time. The sleeper that she'd worked so hard to place was a double agent. He'd been turned by the Soviets and was feeding the Americans lies. But what shocked the boss even more was why. The CIA's access agent had been taking a large cut of the sleeper's pay. The sleeper felt what little he was left with wasn't worth the risk. When he got a better offer from Moscow, he took it. At some point, the Americans' intelligence operation had become an open book to the Soviets. And contrary to what the sleeper had been reporting, the Soviets' manned spaceflight technology was quite advanced. It wasn't until she infiltrated OKB-1 herself that the boss learned the truth about Sputnik 5. After the spacecraft re-entered the atmosphere, it ejected the pilot, seat and all, at an altitude of 7,000 meters. It was the Soviet solution to the problem of land recovery. The mystery device attached to Sputnik 5 was for that purpose. The pilot would parachute down from that high altitude wearing a bulky spacesuit. Crazy, I know. The Soviets knew exactly how dangerous it was, of course. So much so that they gave Yuri Gagarin, the first man in space, a special 2-rank promotion before re-entry. Only Moscow could come up with this kind of plan. With total state control over information, they could easily pretend it never happened in the event of a failure. The boss passed the info on to NASA. It was their worst nightmare. The glory of mankind's first spaceflight was about to be stolen from them by the Soviet Union. It was Sputnik all over again. And the CIA was caught no less off guard. Their ineptitude had caused the fiasco in the first place. The Soviets' deception was brilliant. They'd woven a masterful tapestry of truth and fiction to convince the Americans their intelligence operations were proceeding as planned. No one but the boss could have seen through it. It was obvious the Soviets had some gifted minds working on their side. But that certainly didn't excuse the CIA's massive failure. The CIA wasn't done, though, and devised an ingenious plan to avoid taking responsibility. Luckily for them, a new president had been elected the previous November, John F. Kennedy. As he didn't know the case history when taking office, the CIA was able to feed lies to his new administration. They masked their own failures, placing the blame squarely on the boss's shoulders. After all, she'd selected an unreliable sleeper. They claimed she'd failed to make use of one of the most effective means of controlling a sleeper agent's actions: holding their family hostage. The boss was well aware that would have worked. She told me so later, but she couldn't bring herself to do it. It seems clear it had to do with having her own child taken. She could never inflict the same pain on anyone else. The CIA used that against her. In his election campaign, Kennedy had vowed to close the missile gap with Moscow. If America lost the space race, that promise would be worthless. The fact that the president had no links to the philosophers only made things worse. He was completely unaware of the secret networks she'd used to complete her mission. In his eyes, she was no better than a traitor. The fate that awaited her was cruel beyond belief. The order came down from above. The boss would take the official blame. The boss would take the official blame for the sleeper's betrayal. More so, she'd serve as the guinea pig for NASA's manned spaceflight program. By then, NASA had gotten as far as sending a chimp named Ham into space. Now came a whole battery of ground tests to pave the way for a human to take its place. High-G tests, zero-G tests, spacesuit tests, simulations in pressurized oxygen environments. Some of the tests were highly dangerous, too dangerous for the Mercury 7, who were by then already media darlings. So the boss was made to stand in for them. She could have refused the order, argued her side of the story against the CIA, but she didn't. The way she saw it, her military experience made her a potentially valuable asset to those tests. She felt it was her duty to accept. She soon proved herself right. The boss was more than just a guinea pig. She drew on her experience to give the staff focused advice exactly where it was needed. NASA's space program took off again. At the rate they were going, putting a man in space seemed within reach. The higher-ups at NASA were impressed with her talents. They took to calling her the 8th astronaut, the Mercury Lady. The photo I sent you was taken around that time. I suppose maybe they were planning to use it as propaganda, the world's first female astronaut. But then, just as things were looking up, they hit a new snag. The government told them to add a window. There were no windows in NASA's spacecraft back then. Ham never saw the stars around him. But Washington insisted. Their sources told them Soviet spaceships had windows. Space exploration as a form of propaganda in itself. After all, what was the point of sending a man into space if he couldn't tell the world what he'd seen? Most of all, though, they simply couldn't have the Russians doing something they couldn't. It was sheer madness, and everybody knew it. NASA was already facing impossible deadlines. Now they were adding yet another element of uncertainty to the mix. Installing a window would both weaken the spacecraft and make it harder to shield the occupant from cosmic rays. They weren't about to put their Mercury 7 golden boys in that kind of danger. So the boss was chosen as the pilot instead. Even if she made it up into space, she was given less than a 20% chance of returning to Earth alive. But she took it in stride, even helping them make the necessary design changes to the Mercury capsule. It was like going to work every day at NASA to make her own coffin. Then, without warning, the U.S. received intelligence that the Soviets had moved their Vostok spacecraft to the launch site. The launch was set for the following day, April 12th, 1961. America couldn't let the Soviets beat them with Vostok. NASA was forced to cut short the testing process and move the launch date up. They pulled out all the stops to get it scheduled for the earliest hours of the next day. The spacecraft would be launched from Cape Canaveral in the dead of night. For the flight path, they chose a course that would take her as far east as possible. She'd be able to see the Earth in daylight from the window, at least for a little while. The boss climbed into the Mercury capsule, having completed less than 80% of the regular flight procedures. Both the timing and the flight path were risky, and testing was far from complete. But NASA had no other choice. The boss, for her part, never expected to come home alive. She was going on a one-way trip, the American version of Laika the dog. And yet she went all the same. "Someone has to be first," she said. "If fate has chosen me, then I accept, for my country, for the balance of the world." That's how she saw things. My chances may be slim, but I'll take them. I've accepted my fate. If anyone can get through this, I can. Then, on April 12th at 1:30 in the morning, the boss entered space. It was nothing short of a miracle. First, that she'd made it in an incomplete spacecraft. And second, that her flight coincided almost exactly with Gagarin's. As the sun rose over the horizon, and cosmic rays began to bombard her through the window, she saw the Earth. I think you've heard the story before. It was a world without borders, a perfect jewel. All nations, all ideologies. They seemed so far away. It almost made her laugh, knowing that they'd risked so much to beat the Soviets by a few short minutes. If she'd seen Vostok from her window, she probably would have waved. But the two spacecraft were destined for very different fates. Gagarin circled the Earth and returned to the Soviet Union, safe and sound. The Mercury capsule, on the other hand, deviated from its planned re-entry angle. The addition of a window had thrown the capsule's aerodynamics off balance. The boss's coffin veered wildly off course and began to plunge earthward. The course deviation caused the capsule to miss its splashdown point by a wide margin. It didn't have enough time to decelerate before crashing into the sea. The force of the impact shattered the spacecraft before it started to sink like a stone. The boss used the last of her strength to escape to the surface. Her body was covered in bruises and scorched by radiation. It was a miracle she was still alive. She slipped into a coma and didn't regain consciousness for 6 months. To some, what was worst of all was that she had lost the space race to Gagarin by only a few minutes. That aside, it should have been a proud day for America. Its first manned spaceflight. Sadly, her accomplishment was kept out of the history books. An attempt to save face by Washington. In contrast to Gagarin's orbital flight, America had only managed a ballistic trajectory. Her flight time was much shorter, too. And most importantly, the Soviets had brought back both spacecraft and pilot safely. NASA couldn't even conjure up a half-hearted tale of heroic survival. The coup de grace, though, was the Soviet propaganda campaign that kicked into gear after the flight. The Earth was blue. Those were the words of Gagarin on his return, and the whole world was listening. In the blink of an eye, Gagarin was an international celebrity, earning accolades from every corner. It was a PR coup for the Soviet Union. Meanwhile, Washington could only grit its teeth in silence. They decided there was no value in making the boss's flight public, that it would only make matters worse. So they buried it instead, labeling it a dark mission. NASA and the CIA did everything in their power to erase all traces of the boss from Project Mercury. The result was the photo you see before you. Not a bad job, huh? Not only did they expunge her flight from the records, they denied that she ever existed. And that wasn't the end of it. As an alibi, the military claimed she'd taken part in the CIA's botched Bay of Pigs plot to take back Cuba. And when the boss was finally well enough to return to service, they wouldn't take her back. She was forced to go underground. In the public eye, the boss was still a hero of World War II. In reality, though, she was anything but that. She was a non-person, fit only for the blackest of black ops. In effect, she may as well have been dead. Gagarin went on a worldwide tour in front of millions of adoring fans. The boss, meanwhile, was a walking secret, unable to breathe a word about her experience. The authorities in Washington had this to say: "Why are you still here? If only you'd had the decency to give us a nice quote like Gagarin and then die an honorable death, you'd have gone down as a hero." 3 weeks later, on May 5th, Alan Shepard, one of the Mercury 7, made his own ballistic flight. They sure didn't try to cover up his achievement. Of course, he owed his success to the lessons learned from the boss's tragedy. Before sending Gagarin up into space, the Soviets had used a mannequin called Ivan Ivanovich to test the landing procedure, which would make the boss America's version of a crash test dummy. But she didn't care. "I'm happy to be the dummy," she said, "if it'll help the project succeed. Nothing would give me greater satisfaction." And that still wasn't the end of it. The boss had worked through the anti-Moscow faction of the Soviet Union's philosophers to place the sleeper agent, and at some point, the Soviets found out about it. Yet the Americans remained oblivious to the end. Even the philosopher network the boss plugged into never tipped them off to the double cross. That could only mean one of two things. Either the pro-Moscow philosophers had intervened, or the anti-Moscow philosophers had been turned. Either way, it was a situation their American counterparts couldn't stand. To preserve the philosopher's good name, and to repay her debt, so to speak, the boss once again made her way into the Soviet Union. There, she found herself face to face with the Soviets' own agent. And who should she find awaiting her return to Russia? The one who'd turned her sleeper against her, who'd fed them lies all this time. It was her former comrade in arms, the father of her child, the man known as the Sorrow. He didn't know it was the boss who'd sent the sleeper. Or to be more precise, the Soviet philosophers never told him. Former lovers, forced to fight to the death. One would live and one would die, she told me. That was the revenge the Soviet philosophers had in store for me. If both of them survived, their child would suffer in their place. They were left with no other option. The boss shot him. He offered no resistance. When she returned from the Soviet Union, there was no place left for her to go. She'd sacrificed everything. Everything. For her country. And in return, they treated her like a dead woman. She was made a scapegoat for no good reason. Only because power had changed hands in Washington. Any lesser being would have long since cracked. It was then that one of her old SAS comrades reached out to her, Major Zero, and so Fox was born. She undertook a mission that, well, you should know better than anybody. You were a part of it. 20 days after Shepard's flight, President Kennedy announced that America would put a man on the moon. Without the intelligence the boss obtained, America's space program would never have caught up. Armstrong and Aldrin might never have walked on the moon, but the Americans' gain had cost the boss her health, her honor, and the man she loved. The word tragedy doesn't even begin to describe what she endured. The Soviets continued their manned space flights, and in 1963, Valentina Tereshkova became the so-called first woman in space. It's said they took their cue from NASA's long-buried Mercury Lady project. And so that, Snake, is the mission that kept her away from you for so long. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why not use me as her agent? She knew I'd never even think of betraying her. I think it's because she didn't want to drag you into it. She probably knew what was going to happen. To complete the mission, she'd have to turn to the philosophers, and once she did that, whatever came of it, there'd be a price to pay. No one understood that better than her. So please, Snake, let it go. When she gave me the photo, she left me to decide whether or not to pass it along to you. I know she was torn about it, just as I was. She knew you'd probably blame yourself. Why did she hold on to it for so long? That, I can't say. To remind her of how much it hurt to be erased. She wasn't that kind of person. No. I think she meant it to be a message to you. She had her identity, her life, taken away. But she wanted you, of all people, to know the truth. Snake, you've probably already figured this out, but it's no accident that I'm only now sending you something I've withheld for so long. Little Bird tells me you recently made a big decision. You and the boss are different people. I understand that. And I'm not trying to second guess you. I simply wanted you to know what she saw. how she felt. That's all. Keep it with you, Snake. Keep it deep inside. Don't ever forget the path she took. Because you and I are the only people on this earth who know the truth.
Boss. I'm sorry. But I can't.
This is a high... Neutralize the Pupa AI weapon.
Engaging shock units. Engaging shock units. Firing boosters. Engaging shock units. Firing boosters. Commencing jump.
Kept you waiting, huh?
Engaging shock units.
Already. You haven't stopped it from moving.
Others are dead. Others are dead. Others are dead. Others are dead. Others are dead.
To the AI pod and press the action. the unlocked memory boards. Pull out the memory boards. All the unlocked boards will have icons over them.
Any boards you remove can be used to build up...
What? What's a tape doing there?
Memory boards have different functions according to the icons displayed over them. Go ahead and take whichever ones you want. If you attack parts on the exterior of the machine, the memory boards that control those parts should light up. You can tell what a memory board does by looking at its color when it lights up. No good! That one's broken!
This is a... unlocked memory boards. Pull out the memory boards. All the unlocked boards will have icons over them.
Any boards you remove can be used to build our own AI weapon. Memory boards have different functions according to the icons displayed over them.
What? What's a tape doing there?
If you attack parts on the exterior of the machine, the memory boards that control those parts should light up. You can tell what a memory board does by looking at its color when it lights up.
This memory boards. Pull out the memory boards. All the unlocked boards will have icons over them.
Any boards you remove can be used to build our own AI weapon. Memory boards have different functions according to the icons displayed over them. Go ahead and take whichever ones you want. If you attack parts on the exterior of the machine, the memory boards that control what?
What's a tape doing there?
You can tell what a memory board does by looking at its color when it lights up.
This is a... Neutralize the pupa AI weapon.
Engaging shock units. Engaging shock units. Engaging shock units.
Hot already. You haven't stopped it from moving. Get to the AI pod and press the action button when the icon shows up. Pull out all the unlocked memory boards. Pull out the memory boards. All the unlocked boards will have icons over them.
Any boards you want.
What's a tape doing there?
Memory boards have different functions according to the icons displayed over them. Go ahead and take whichever ones you want. If you attack parts on the exterior of the machine, the memory boards that control those parts should light up. You can tell what a memory board does by looking at its color when it lights up.
This... Neutralize the Pupa AI weapon.
Engaging shock. Firing boosters. Commencing jump. Engaging shock units. Firing boosters. Commencing jump.
You haven't stopped it from moving.
I guess I died. Oops, 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 I guess I died.
Pull out all the unlocked memory boards. Pull out the memory boards. All the unlocked boards will have icons over them.
Any boards you remove can be used to build our own AI weapon. weapon. Memory boards have different functions according...
What? What's a tape doing there?
If you attack parts on the exterior of the machine, the memory boards that control those parts should light up. You can tell what a memory board does by looking at its color when it lights up.
This is a...
Engaging shock units. Engaging shock units.
Unlocked memory boards. Pull out the memory boards. All the unlocked boards will have icons over them.
Any boards you remove can be used to build our own AI weapon. Memory boards have different functions according according to the icons displayed over them. Go ahead and take whichever ones you want. If you attack parts on the exterior of the machine, the memory boards that control those parts should light up. You can...
What? What's a tape doing there?
You're fired. You're fired. You're fired. You're fired.
Commencing mission.
As of today, I will be living here at Mother Base. Now my real trial begins. Zadornov was paying my room, board, and tuition, but he has since been captured. I told the man that with no more money from the KGB, I could no longer afford school. He bought my story, and when I said I would be willing to work, He took pity on me and let me stay. For some reason, Miller really pled my case. That was helpful, but the man is still a fool. His men are no better. They think their training makes them strong, but that kind of strength is nothing in the face of true power. And better yet, they wait on me hand and foot, believing I am just a schoolgirl. Looks like I won't be working too hard after all. Just today, while scouting out the living quarters, I saw a group of them in the corner of the deck making a fuss. Going over for a look, I saw they were feeding a kitten. A bunch of grown hard men, and they're the ones acting like schoolgirls. Look, isn't he cute? What is wrong with them? Disgusted, I just nodded and smiled. I must stay in character after all. I indulged their chit-chat for a few moments. Then one of them asked me to give the thing a name. They had just taken it from its mother. I named it Nuke. I improvised some nonsense about how our compassion for living things can help prevent wars. The men gave me a little fish. I held it out in my palm and the kitten happily ate it up. What a pathetic, feeble creature. It sickens me. Today, Chico invited me to go fishing with the soldiers. I suppose finding one's own food does have its merit, but I prefer not to be involved in such a degrading task. And their prattling on about fishing being fun is nonsense. I'm not here to find playmates. Nevertheless, distasteful as it was, I went along in order to maintain my cover. Chico thrust a fishing pole into my hands, and we went up onto the deck where several soldiers had gathered. They welcomed us warmly. With so few women aboard Mother Base, I'm treated like a princess. No one suspects I am neither a teenager nor a student. It was nice and sunny, with a gentle breeze and waves. As I cast my line and waited for a bite, the soldiers began to ask me all sorts of questions. As always, I answered according to our predefined scenario, feigning a smile. As I sat there feeding them lies, the fish began to bite, and the soldiers began to focus on their prey. Chico had his bait stolen by a fish, and got so angry that he stood up and nearly fell into the sea. Everybody laughed. It almost made me want to join in too. At some point, I got a bite myself. The instant after I felt that first gentle tug, the fish yanked the line with astonishing strength, and I let out a cry of surprise. I thought he was going to be huge. It was my first time fishing, and I was a bit flustered, so the soldier beside me helped by supporting the pole from behind. "Reel it in," they shouted. I nodded, turning the handle as fast as I could. I wondered what kind of fish live below the surface, and thought back to the deep sea dives I had to do as part of training. Those were difficult days, but I remember finding the multicolored fish gliding through the water incredibly soothing. After a hard fight, I pulled it up. To my surprise, it wasn't even half a vara, rather anticlimactic. But I wasn't doing it for fun, so I wasn't the least bit disappointed. Nuke was hovering nearby with an expectant look on his face, so I gave the fish to him. All in all, a thoroughly wasted day. Preparations are coming along nicely. No one suspects me of being the one to let Zadornov out of his cell. Today, Amanda and I taught Cecile how to make gallo pinto. It is a simple home-cooked dish consisting of black frijoles mixed with arroz. It is well known throughout Central America, not just in Costa Rica, so it is no surprise that a Nica like Amanda would be good at making it. But I was raised in the States from a very young age, and could hardly even remember my mother's gallo pinto. having to make chit-chat with that clueless bird lover and the so-called revolutionary was excruciating. And, clueless or not, I wanted to be especially careful around Cecile, the one who actually recorded that tape. Thankfully, Miller and his men seemed to believe I mistook the tape I found for one my friend made. In any case, one can never be too careful. Anyway, the three of us minced garlic and herbs, then cooked them in a pot with frijoles we'd soaked overnight. While waiting for them to cook, we sautéed onions and arroz in a frying pan. Cecile worked the frying pan according to Amanda's directions, but seemed a bit glum. She does have a knack for cooking, though. She is French, after all. We added water to the pan and watched the arroz begin to steam. While we waited, Amanda shared memories of her mother with us. They had been separated because of Somoza, but the taste of her mother's cooking was still fresh in her mind. When the frijoles were ready, we drained the water, stir-frying them with the rest of the vegetables. Quite a complicated process for home cooking. Nonetheless, it kept them occupied. The longer we sat and talked, the greater the chance of my arousing their suspicions. With women, it is not enough to just bat your eyelashes and giggle. It takes a lot of effort to divert attention. When the arroz was done cooking, we folded it into the frijoles and added salsa, stirring the mixture as it simmered. At this point, for some reason, the conversation turned to romance. Why does it have to be that way whenever women get together and chat? Cecile fancies herself to be well-versed in such matters, and gave Amanda all sorts of advice. It was harmless enough, until, to my irritation, she began pestering me whether there was anybody I liked. Not right now, I said, trying to dodge the question. But she pressed on. It's Snake, isn't it? I gritted my teeth and played it coy. Maybe. Cecile nodded and giggled. He is pretty sexy, isn't he? What a ditz. It's all I can manage to just survive. The thought of romance has never once crossed my mind. I have no interest in that kind of man. Soon enough, a rich aroma began to fill the room. The gallo pinto was ready. New came over and rubbed up against our legs, looking for a handout. Unfortunately, it was not the kind of food a cat would like. We let a few of the soldiers have a bite, and then headed off to the mess hall. The home-cooked flavor we'd achieved was a big hit with the men of MSF. Not that we are trying to impress them or anything. Even I could manage a dish like that. Snake enjoyed it too. Let me make this absolutely clear. I have no interest in that man. Football, or soccer as it is known in the States, is extremely popular here. It has not caught on yet in the US, but it has legions of rabid fans all across Latin America. These fans can get so rowdy that it is commonly believed El Salvador and Honduras went to war in 1969 over scuffles in a soccer match. In reality, tensions between the two countries were already high. The match was merely one of the sparks that set them off. But these people are so passionate about this sport that the story seems plausible. Predictably, many of the soldiers here are fans. They have apparently divided themselves into Costa Rican and Nicaraguan teams and started playing each other. To play, you need a ball and 2 goals. The R&D team built and set up simple goals on the deck. I had absolutely no interest, but Chico insisted that I come and watch. It was not a proper match by any means. The pitch was not even regulation size, but the players and spectators alike got pretty excited. They banged empty cans and shouted cheers through the handmade megaphones. It almost felt like carnival. Huey, the referee, blew a whistle to start the match. The soldiers' training has left them in excellent physical shape, but they lacked the honed skills of professionals and their play was quite rough. Midway through, one of the men collided with another. They started shouting at one another, but Huey stepped in. I thought we had forsaken our countries, become one with the earth, he said, quoting Snake. We are not competing for national pride here, and we are not fighting for the good of any one country. This is not a war. Soccer is a peaceful sport, am I right? The soldiers nodded. They know the pain of war, and they share Snake's vision. Perhaps that is why all this resonates with them. Team Costa Rica was down a man, and somehow I was picked to fill in. Costa Rica had the advantage up until that point. I suppose Huey wanted to keep it balanced. The soldiers agreed with Huey's call. Maybe the Costa Rican players felt an even matchup would be more fun too. I could not be bothered to run at first, but chasing the ball out there in the hot sun, I was soon drenched in sweat. Before long, I found myself actively seeking out the ball, partially out of desperation. I picked up a loose ball deep on the opponent's side of the field. Even though he's Nicaraguan, Chico cheered me on, yelling, "Go for it, shoot!" I launched the ball as hard as I could, only to have it blocked by the keeper. Disappointment only increased my determination. In the end, I didn't score a single goal, and Costa Rica gave up its lead. It was really close, though. We congratulated each other on a good match and sprawled out in the shade on the deck, exhausted. The ocean breeze felt so nice on my sun-soaked body. Nuke came over. It is one of his favorite spots, and stretched out next to me. And together, we watched fluffy white clouds drift lazily across the clear blue sky. It was lovely out today, so I decided to sun myself in a lounge chair up on the deck when Strangelove came up to me. Despite the heat, she was in her usual long sleeves and pants. I waved at her. She looked away and mumbled, "Hello there. Fancy meeting you here." I asked if she needed anything, feeling her eyes creeping up and down my body like she was savoring it. Finally, she swallowed and said, "You have such beautiful skin." Bewildered, I shook my head and said, "No, not at all. I had heard rumors that she was a lesbian, but she couldn't be after me, could she?" She continued to stare and said, "No, it is beautiful, but you must not let yourself get so tanned." And then she took my hand in hers. "What is wrong with a little sun?" I asked, trying to cut the conversation short. But she shook her head violently. "No, you mustn't. A young lady should take better care of her skin." She was acting strangely now, as if aroused. She lectured me on the perils of tanning, how it ages skin, causing wrinkles and spots, and in the worst cases, even skin cancer. I knew already that tanning could cause spots, but I thought only pale-skinned Anglo-Saxons had to deal with that. Having a scientist tell me it causes aging, though, that spooked me a little. If I am to keep playing the teenager, I will have to start paying more attention to my skin. Sensing my anxiety, she took a small tube from her pocket. She said it was the sunscreen she always used. She told me to keep it. I didn't know what to say. I was more than happy to take it, but exactly what were her intentions? Was she merely being nice? Or is she really into me? Either way, there was no reason to refuse, I suppose. I have undergone training. An out-of-shape woman does not pose any real threat to me. Having power means not being afraid. It is the same on a global scale. A country with nukes can dictate terms to a country without them. I thanked her and took the tube. Then she offered to put some on for me. She squirted some lotion onto her fingers and began rolling it into my chest. It happened so suddenly, and I was so taken aback that I did not even think to protest. She caressed my stomach with her long white fingers, then slid them upwards between my bikini-clad breasts. "What? Wait," I sputtered as her moist eyes met mine. She was beautiful. Somehow, I found myself captivated by this woman more than 10 years my elder. "Hold still," she whispered in my ear. I nodded silently, unable to refuse. My body went limp, motionless, as if in a trance. Gently, carefully, she rubbed the lotion all over my entire body. I shouldn't have enjoyed it, and yet I could not help myself. For a moment, I was spellbound. That woman is dangerous. I had better watch myself. Protecting one's health is an important part of any agent's job. But despite my best efforts, I have caught a cold. Now that I think about it, Mother Base's numbers are on the rise, with soldiers coming from all different places and backgrounds. It is no wonder then that sooner or later someone would bring in a virus. That said, what I have got is just a common cold. The medical team said I'd need a few days rest, so I've been restricted to my room and put on bed rest. I thought I'd gotten used to not having anyone around to relate to, but at times like these, being alone is just miserable. All I could do is lay there and stroke Nook's back, trying to take my mind off how bad I felt. Nook just sat there, not making a sound. But I did have visitors. Amanda and Chico, Huey, Cecile, Miller, and a few of the soldiers I've become relatively close to. Amanda made me a soup with herbs she said were good for a cold. Miller told me to take it easy. I will sing you a lullaby, he said, then broke out a guitar and sang some incomprehensible song in Japanese. I did not need to understand the lyrics to know he is an awful singer. Then he said, "You know what is good for a cold? Suppositories. Here, I'll show you." He began to take off his pants, so I threw my tissue box at him to make him go away. Then Strangelove showed up, saying she had some miracle Indian cure. "It has got eucalyptus extract," she said. "It works best if you rub it into your chest." And then she tried to take off my nightshirt. I whacked her with my pillow, and I got rid of her. Chico brought me a little flower in a cup. It had been growing in a little bit of earth that probably found its way on board, stuck to something else. "I found this on the deck. Here, you can have it." He tried to act nonchalant, but I am pretty sure he's got a crush on me. None of them understand. If they thought these little visits would cheer me up, they were wrong. Tonight, Snake himself came to my room. Like the rest, he believes I am just a schoolgirl and treats me as such. "Why did you abandon your country?" I asked him. "Why create the MSF?" Of course, I knew the answers already, but I wanted to hear it from him. As I had imagined, he was not exactly forthcoming. All he would say is that his country abandoned him because all he could do was fight, and that is why he needed the MSF, because that is all he is any good for. Then he said, "Fighting is the only thing I understand, but that does not mean I have got a grudge against those who believe in peace. I am not one of them, and I do not believe in peace. Conflict is in man's nature. We fight our enemies in order to survive." Maybe we are not so different after all, he and I. But that is exactly why I'm going to have to kill him, or else he will have to kill me. When I stop and think about this wretched existence, being killed by a man like that suddenly does not seem like such a bad thing. Every month, Mother Base throws a party for all the soldiers whose birthdays fall in that month. There is something strange about a military organization having parties. Really though, it is just an excuse to drink and make noise. It is not easy to get alcohol in a fortress in the middle of the ocean. Most days they are training from dawn till dusk. They do not have time for things like drinking. That is why Snake and Miller came up with the idea, to give everyone a chance to let loose. Obviously, a bunch of boors like that are not going to bother with blowing out candles on a cake. Rather, they sit there in a cloud of cigarette smoke, drink beer, eat meat, tell tasteless jokes, and swap crude insults about one another's hometowns. But it hardly ever breaks out into something serious. They talk up a storm, but they're just having fun. It is funny. You have got members of FSLN rubbing shoulders with the UCLAs, people who once would have considered the other mortal enemies. I wonder if that is what makes Big Boss so popular. In leaving their countries behind, they leave their hatred for other countries too. Miller seemed a little protective of me. Hope they're not being too crude, he said. But soon enough, he too was drunk. He yelled, "Come here and take a look at the real Kazuhira Miller," then dropped his pants and mooned everybody. The other soldiers burst out laughing. I have never seen such a crude, ridiculous party before. And yet, all these people, laughing and acting the fool. Is this what they call peace? For some reason, I began to think about all that has happened since I came here. Fishing with Chico, cooking with Amanda and Cecile, playing soccer, having visitors when I caught a cold. When I stop and think about it, my time here has been the most peaceful of my life. But that is about to end. I cannot imagine he will be willing to negotiate. It seems I am to fight the legendary Big Boss. I do not know if I'll be able to beat him, but if I have to choose between death and defying Cypher, I will gladly choose death. The thought of dying does not scare me, but if I disobey my orders, the fear and despair awaiting me will be far worse than anything I can imagine. It was Cypher who took me in as an orphan, gave me food and a place to live. His orders may have been unreasonable, but I will never repay my debt entirely. It seems I have no choice. I must fight this man. I must fight Snake. Do you know Miller, Snake's right-hand man? Apparently has got at least one serious weakness. He is an insatiable womanizer. He does not bother me, most likely because he considers teenagers off-limits. But he has hit on every single one of the few female soldiers here at Mother Base. They ought to be telling him where to stick it, but end up falling for it so easily. I think some of it stems from the fact that he is actually not that bad looking. Anyway, today, that nasty habit got him in trouble. He and Snake got into one of their rare fights, and I was there to see it. They burst out of the showers, completely naked, trading punches. I am no child. The sight of a naked man does not make me blush, but this was something else. "Maybe this'll teach you," Snake yelled as he slammed his fists into Miller's chest. I heard later that apparently he'd been two-timing someone, and that same someone had gone to Snake with her troubles. As I see it, it is her own fault for letting herself be deceived like that. If she is too dumb to see through Miller's lies, then she got what she deserved. But this was not the first time it had happened, or the second, and Snake read Miller the riot act. Miller argued back, and what began as a shouting match turned into a fist fight. "You son of a bitch," Miller yelled as he swung. "Not bad," said Snake, smiling, "but not good enough." And then he was back on the offensive. They had already been at it pretty hard in the showers, and their bodies were covered with bruises. Both of these men had been trained for war, their bodies deadly weapons. They were each bleeding from a dozen places. All this from a fist fight. Even so, it was far less gruesome than if they had given it their all. It was obvious that one of them would be dead were they fighting for real. Miller took another swing, yelling, "Try this then!" Snake parried, then responded in kind, but I could tell he was not aiming for anything vital. "You are one tough bastard, boss," Miller muttered. A smile crept across his face as he caught his breath. And then they went right on fighting. Blood and sweat flew off their glistening bodies. It was combat without hatred or hostile intent. I had never seen violence like this before. And yet, it was more than just a friendly tussle. They were utilizing every technique they knew. It was not a sporting match. They were not playing by the rules. How could they keep this up? At last the two men tired themselves out, and the bizarre scene came to an end. They looked at each other's battered bodies, and then burst out laughing, embracing and congratulating each other on a good fight. It all seemed so idiotic. I still cannot fathom such behavior. But somehow, I got the sense that for all his womanizing, Miller really only trusted one person, and that was Snake. There was no way I could ever come between the two of them, and at that thought, I began to feel as if I had lost. All of Mother Base is preparing for a festival. Since Snake and his soldiers spend so much time fighting, they are setting aside one day a year for peace and relaxation. I do not know all the details, but apparently that is what Snake and Miller decided. These soldiers love the idea, of course. There is so little fun to be had here that everybody looks forward to events like these. That is all well and good, but somehow I got roped into getting on stage. Come on, we even both have peace in our name, said Miller. And Zadarnov, that old Ruski's name, has something to do with peace too, right? Hey, as long as we're having a day of peace, we ought to get an act together. The Three-Piece Band. I thought he was joking. He then proceeded to share his idea without bothering to check with me. And now, I am slated to sing. Apparently, he had heard me on the deck one day, and since then he's wanted to form a band. Everybody's looking forward to it, so there is no way for me to back out now. I've never done anything like this, but it does feel kind of nice to know that people are looking forward to it. I mean, it cannot be any worse than Miller's singing, but modifications to Zeke are already finalized, and I must complete my mission. Betray Cypher now, and I will face a fate far worse than death. Still, there is no need to put things in motion just yet. What difference would it make to just wait a little while longer? A whole day of peace. The mission can wait until after that. Can it not? I know I am only delaying the inevitable. When the day comes, one of us will have to die. Snake or me. But still, if I could just come up with some way to stall Cypher, at least until our day of peace. When did I start having thoughts like this? My cover is blown. They know nothing of Cypher or my true objective, but they know I am a spy. There is no more time left. I must act now. I must complete my mission. How did it come to this? All I wanted was 3 more days. Just 3. Miller's already finished writing the song. It is called Love Deterrent. It is about a girl who cannot express her true feelings. I have been practicing. I am no pro, but I was pretty sure I would do a decent job. And now this. Cypher found out that Zeke was complete. He must have someone inside Mother Base besides me, spinning his tightly wound web of control, leaving no room for individual will. Typical. When they found out Zeke was complete, I was ordered to execute the operation immediately. If I was going to enjoy just 1 day of peace, I had to ensure the plan could not move forward. I tried to sabotage Zeke. I thought by damaging the drive system, they would have no choice but to delay their plans. I waited until midnight, and then snuck into the hangar. There would be trouble if it looked like sabotage. I selected one of the drive system's load-bearing parts and carefully worked to warp its shape. The leg's drive system requires a high degree of precision to operate. Even the smallest deviation would have done it. Then, Chico walked in. Maybe it was one of those nights where he could not sleep. In any case, he saw me, panicked, and took off running. It would have been easy to kill him, but I could not. I know he likes me. It is not as if I would ever have an interest in a child like him, but I could not pull the trigger. Not at him. Not in the back. Will he tell them? Or is there a chance he will keep it a secret? Protect me? No. He knows now. Knows I am not who he thought I was. He ran without even questioning what I was doing. There is no chance he does not know. And soon, all I have built here will end. And if Cypher has another agent among them, if he finds out I tried to sabotage Zeke, this place will no longer be my heaven. Then it is settled. I make my move now. Chico walked in before my sabotage was complete, so Zeke should still be operational. It might not run at full speed or power, but I do not have time to fix that. Without Zeke, I do not have a chance in hell of winning. I must act fast before Chico sounds the alarm. I knew it would come to this. I just did not think it would be so soon. It is time, Zeke. Metal Gear Zeke. Activate.
Neutralize the enemy troops. They're trying to find you. Make sure they don't. Commence. Neutralize the enemy troops. They're trying to find you. Make sure they don't. Evocate the request for supporting fire. It should commence any second now. Evocate the request for support. They're sending out a cardboard box as we speak. Armed and ready! This one takes a punch! Take base! Going it alone? No way! You're out of your mind! That's gotta be the leader. Can you take him down? Fire! Maintain and ready to fire! This one takes a punch! Take base! That takes care of their leader. Recover him and it's mission complete.
You're fired.